Hello, everybody. On behalf of the Center for Character Formation, I want to welcome you all to our conference today. I'm sure you're going to have a great time, and thank you for being here today. As you know, some of you know, we've been working for some years with this organization that was started around 7 years ago by a group of professionals here in El Paso looking to better our community and our society. Tonight we're going to have the Virtuous Leadership Conference. And first of all, I want to thank our sponsors for this event. There were some companies and individuals that help us organize this. Roma Homes, Horizon Construction, Exigo Architects, Scotto Custom Brokers, Independiente, Raiz Federal Credit Union, Immigration Spurgeon, CTEX Construction, Novamex, Jarritos, Mammoth Rock, Bujanda Allen, Technimark, and International Assets Advisory. I want to thank them all for making this possible and for being involved in this type of events for the improvement of our community and of our organization. I'm going to tell you briefly what our Center for Character Formation is. Our mission is to advance the integration of leadership development to improve the character of individuals and their civil, professional, and personal lives. So we think everything we do every day has an impact in the rest of the people in our community. If we want to be better community, if we want to have a better society, we have to start by ourselves, okay? There's 4 main areas of influence that we want to impact. First of all, business and professional ethics. We have some seminars and courses toward these 2 issues. Ethics, very important in our companies and in our corporations, and also by ourselves. Number 2, family and marriage. We believe family is the foundation of our society, so it is very important that we help families be stronger, okay? And marriage is also a big part of that foundation. Youth development and formation. We think, of course, youth is the base of our society, and we need to help them integrate into everything we do. We cannot be isolated from them. We cannot delegate their education and their growth to other people but ourselves. And to finish, human and moral values. Actually, the conference today is going to touch on that subject, which is very important also. We see the environment, the social environment, being a little bit more aggressive every day toward our persons. So we need to strengthen also our moral values, okay? So welcome to the conference. I hope you like it. Thank you again. I'll have Eugenio Mesta now. Thank you very much.
Good evening. For those of you that really don't know, my real name is Eugenio Mesta, not Pacelli. Tonight we have a distinguished guest speaker that comes from Moscow. So because of where he's coming from, we turn off the heaters so that he will feel at home. It's not a joke, it's the heater broke. So So I apologize if you have to wear your jacket tonight inside the theater, but things happen, and of course it had to be the coldest day of this winter so far. But yesterday we were outside of my house. He wanted to have a cigarette, so we step outside, and of course I go and get my jacket, and he says, he was in a t-shirt. I mean, it's like, are you sure? He says, yeah, sure, whatever. So we turn off the heater at home as well. But kidding aside, Alexander Havard is French. He's a French thinker and leadership expert. Born in Paris, I'm not going to say how many years ago, Havard is the grandson of Soviet emigres on both sides of the family. His father's parents fled St. Petersburg during the Bolshevik Revolution, and his mother's father was a Georgian aristocrat who left the Soviet Union in 1926. Alexander Havard is an attorney. He studied law in Paris at the Descartes University, and he was a barrister in Strasbourg and Helsinki. In 2007, he moved back to Moscow, where he resides ever since. And he's going to tell us a little bit more about his life and story in a minute. So he's the founder of the Virtuous Leadership System, which is a worldwide system of virtuous leadership institutes. Without further ado, Alexander Havard.
So I don't see you well because of the light, but I feel your presence, and that's enough for me. Thank you. I want to thank very much the organizers who had the beautiful idea to bring me to Texas, to El Paso. I've been traveling to the United States many times during the last 10 years, but in this place, this is the first time. I heard about El Paso just a few months ago. There is such a thing like El Paso. So, of course, I said immediately, yes, I don't know that place, I have to go there. And here I am with you. I'm very happy. We are going to talk about very, very interesting things. What is virtuous leadership? What's character? What's temperament? What's magnanimity? What's mission? What's the heart? What's the will? What's the intellect? How do we achieve balance and harmony between all those things? What's the meaning of our life? I was born in Paris 60 years ago. I had extraordinary grandparents because they left Soviet Union during the Bolshevik Revolution, and they had suffered a lot. And I like to speak about my grandparents because I spent a lot of time with each one of them, and each one of them has had a very big influence in my life. They still go on living in me. I had great parents. Parents were extraordinary, very magnanimous, very good parents, very good grandparents. I got everything. I'm a lucky man because I got everything when I was young. Extraordinary family. I studied law in Paris. I became a lawyer in Paris, in Strasbourg. And when I was 27, I left. I left my country. And I went to Finland, the north. I like the cold, I like the snow, I like darkness. And I had a good time in Finland. I spent 18 years in Finland. And when I was in Finland, after a few years there, working as a barrister, a friend of mine asked me to give classes on the history of European integration. It's a class where you have to speak a lot about the founders of European Union. I'm not a fan of European Union. I think now European Union has nothing to do with what it was at the very beginning in 1950. But I am a fan of the founders of European Union. They were great people like Robert Schuman, Alcide de Gasperi, Konrad Adenauer, Jean Monnet. Maybe you heard about those guys. They were the founders of European Union, and they were incredible people with very high values, beautiful character, magnificent personalities. And I spent hours and hours speaking to my students about those people, how they've been dreaming, how they've been implementing the dream. And my students were amazed, just amazed, how beautiful it is to be a good, excellent human being. And they were asking me questions, very important questions. Alex, what's the difference between a value and a virtue? Because nowadays we speak a lot about values, but we don't speak much about virtues. And I began to speak about virtues, courage, prudence, self-mastery, justice, magnanimity, humility. And they began to ask me, what's that? And I had to explain them that these are dynamic forces that give you the capacity to achieve your values. Maybe you have values, but if you don't have character, you don't have the virtues, you cannot implement your values. Then they asked me a lot about what's the difference between biological temperament and spiritual character. You know, the 4 temperaments: melancholic, choleric, phlegmatic, sanguine. These are things that are innate in us. And what's the relationship between character, the virtues we've just mentioning? So I decided to quit with law. I saw that these young people at Helsinki University were asking me to give them formation. And the university was just giving them information. And they wanted formation. They wanted to be educated. They wanted to grow. They wanted to become excellent human beings. You know, the word education comes from the Latin word educare, which comes from another Latin word, educere. Educere is to bring out the best in people. When you do this, you educate. When you sell information, you communicate information to people, you don't educate them. So there are very few institutions in the world that can claim being really educational centers. Because nowadays, many universities just give you information. They don't care for real education. And my students were asking for that. And they wanted more. So I decided to quit with law because I thought, there are many lawyers on earth. There are many people who can teach law very well. But there are not so many people that can explain the youth what's character, how to build character, how to become a virtuous leader, how to transform people into real leaders. So I quit. That's now more than 25 years ago, almost 30 years ago, 25, let's say, I quit with law. And I've been doing now, during the last 25 years, what I am doing with you now. So I began to write. I wrote that book, Virtuous Leadership. It took me 4 years to write this book. And I wrote this thinking about my students. 4 years of hard work, of thinking about what is real leadership. And I came to the conclusion that leadership, of course, is character. Leadership is not a position. Leadership is not a function. That's why I don't like the expression, a leadership position. There is no such a thing as a leadership position. My mother was the greatest leader in my life, and she had no position at all. There is no leadership position. You can be a manager, that's a position. You can be a project manager, that's a position, it's a function in an organization. But leadership is not a position, it's a way of being. Many people have no visit cards, and they are extraordinary leaders for the people they serve. So I came to the conclusion that leadership, in the end of the day, it's about achieving greatness by bringing out the greatness in others. This is what leaders do. Leaders achieve greatness by bringing out the greatness in others. So I understood that all of us, we heard about the 4 fundamental virtues of life. the four fundamental virtues that the ancient Greeks, more than 2,500 years ago, discovered. The ancient Greeks, before Aristotle, understood that there are four things that are absolutely basic in life. And if we don't develop those things, we cannot be real human beings. Because these are the human virtues that make us human beings. Of course, each one of us has a spirit, is born with a spirit, so we're born human beings. But for the ancient Greeks, being a human being is a process. You're born with a spirit, but you have to actualize the spirit by developing the human virtues, so you become a human being. That's why the ancient Greeks were used to say, become what you are. Become what you are, it means become a human being. And the way to become a human being is to practice the human virtues as just mentioned. And they say there are four virtues that are fundamental in life. The virtue of practical wisdom, which is prudence, which is the virtue of people who grasp reality, economic, political, financial, human, cultural, and make decisions that fits that reality. We say these people are prudent. And prudence here has nothing to do with be careful. Very often in English, when we say be prudent, we mean be careful. For the ancient Greeks, be prudent doesn't mean be careful. It means make a decision. It's the opposite of be careful. So a prudent person is a person that makes decisions, makes right decisions, someone who is a decision maker and is not afraid of making mistakes. This is the first basic virtue. The second one is courage, which is the capacity for audacity to take risks and the capacity to stay the course. Endurance. Audacity, endurance, those two virtues are virtues of inside the virtue of courage. This is the virtue of the will. Then there is a third virtue, according to the ancient Greeks, which is self-mastery. Self-mastery, it is the capacity to direct your emotions, to use the energy of emotions. Because we are human beings, we have emotions, and it's good that we have emotions. The capacity to use the energy, the positive energy of human emotions, and introduce that energy into the fulfillment of our mission in life. This is what we call self-mastery. And they said there is a fourth virtue that is called justice, which is the virtue of communication, which is the virtue of the sociability of the human person. We are not only individuals, we are social beings, so we need to communicate with others, we need to enter the heart of others, we need to practice all those virtues of communication, truthfulness, to speak the truth, empathy, to listen to people, friendship, mercy, love. These are virtues of communication. So for the ancient Greeks, those four virtues are basics. They are fundamental. We call them now, since the 4th century, we call them the cardinal virtues. But the ancient Greeks just call them the fundamental virtues because they say that if one of those virtues is fundamentally missing, lacking in your life, everything collapses in your life. If you don't have the virtue of prudence, you cannot do anything without mommy because you have no capacity to understand reality and to make decisions that fit that reality. So you cannot be alone. You need to have always with you mama or papa. If you have no courage, if you have no audacity, you cannot take risks. So you stay where you are. You don't move in life. If you don't have endurance, you cannot stay the course. So you cannot walk the talk. You speak beautiful. You speak beautiful words, but everybody knows he's just a bullshitter, as we say in American. Yeah. If you don't possess the virtue of self-mastery, people will understand immediately you're just an animal. You're an animal. Action, reaction. You have no capacity for using your emotions well. You're just under the power of negative emotions. And then you cannot control yourself. You're not the master of yourself. You're just an animal. And if you don't have the virtue of justice, you should be in jail because you're a public danger. You lie to people. You don't like people. You don't have friends. You don't listen to people. you're a danger. You don't communicate with people. You're an individualist that is a public danger for the common good. That's why they say those 4 virtues are fundamental. And I understood that those 4 virtues are very important for leaders. A leader has to be a decision maker, so he has to grasp reality, like everyone else, in order to make decisions that fits that reality. So you need to have a good brain, a good intellect, the right intellect. He needs to be audacious, because if we want to move things in life, we have to have audacity, boldness. He needs to be endurant in order to walk the talk. He needs to have self-mastery in order to control his passions, and he needs justice in order to communicate with people well and to build the common good. I thought those 4 cardinal virtues are very important for leaders because they are very important for any human being. And you leaders are human beings. But then I investigated the life of leaders that I like. And I came to the conclusion that many people practice or try to practice those 4 fundamental virtues, but they are no leaders. I discovered that something is missing in the life of these people. All of us, we know people that try to practice the 4 cardinal virtues, but they are no leaders. We like them because they are human beings. There is humanity in them. Their intellect is working more or less okay. Their will is okay. Prudence is intellect. Courage is the will. Self-mastery is the will. Justice is about giving everyone his due, which means it's the intellect in order to define what is the due to that person, and it's the will because we have to give what is due to them. So those 4 cardinal virtues are virtues of the will and the intellect. And we see these are people that have a good brain, a minimum of wisdom, and at the same time they have a strong will. And we say, this is a good girl, this is a good man. I like to be with him because he tries to be a good human being. We call this in English integrity. We say this is an integrated person. This is a person that has integrity. This was the first step of my reflection. But then, investigating the life of leaders, I saw they have something more. They are not just good people. Leadership is about achieving greatness by bringing out the greatness in others. This is what leaders do. What are the virtues, the stable habits of character that help you achieve this? Magnanimity and humility. Magnanimity, it is the striving of the spirit, of the mind, of the will, of the intellect, of the heart towards great things. Magnanimous people are dreamers. Dreamers that transform their dream into a mission, into action. And many good people don't possess the virtue of magnanimity. And when you do this, you serve people. Achieving greatness by bringing out the greatness in people. By bringing out greatness in people means that you practice the virtue of humility. You are a servant of the others. You serve with your greatness. You transform people into real leaders. You serve people by making them real leaders. And the measure of leadership is fundamentally not the leader himself, but those who are led. Are they growing? Are they becoming themselves leaders? How do you serve those people? How do you elevate them? This is what leaders do. And these are 2 specific virtues of leadership that is magnanimity and humility. Greatness and service. And many people practice the 4 cardinal virtues but are not interested in greatness and service. There is no dream in their life. There is no service in their life. They're just good people. I wrote that book, Virtuous Leadership, where I began to explain those concepts. And I offered that book to François Michelin. Michelin, we say in English. Michelin was an incredible guy. He was during 45 years the CEO of Michelin Group. He read my book, he was amazed, and he wrote me a beautiful letter, and he told me, Alex, next time you will be in France, I would like to meet you. We can have lunch together. So some 15 years ago, I went to France, and I went to Clermont-Ferrand. It is a city where we have the headquarters of the Michelin Group. You know, Michelin is the #1 in the tire industry in the world. François was 45 years the CEO of that group. He received me, we had dinner, we had lunch together. And I asked him, Monsieur François, all of us in France, we know that there is a very specific corporate culture in your company. People like it or hate it. That's why people who go to work for you, it's because they really like the corporate culture of your company. Can you tell me more about how this corporate culture began? And François was immediately, he was happy because he could speak about how this corporate culture was born. And he told me, Alex, look, I have to tell you, I have to speak to you about my grandfather. My grandfather, Edward, was an extraordinary human being. I knew him very well. He told me. He built a company in the end of the 19th century. He began to produce tires for the industry. And one day, already in the 20th century, in the 1920s, a young man called Marius Mignol came to the company. He knocked at the door and he said, I would like to work for Michelin because I have a passion for the tires. Why do you have people that have passion for the tires? This is the reality. He was a passionate guy. And then the chief of staff asked him, do you have a degree? What can you do? You're a good man, but what can you do for us? And the man said, no, I have no degree. I left school when I was 15 for different family reasons, so I have not had real education, but I'm not an idiot. I've been working in the printing department of a company not far away from here, so I know about printing. So the chief of staff liked the guy and said, okay, we have a printing department also at Michelin. So what if I send you there? And Marius said, okay, it's a way for me to work for the tires. Then here we have Marius working in the printing department of Michelin, you know, preparing a newspaper, working on the newspaper they had every month for the company. And Edward, the boss, heard about that story. A simple guy who, like us, whom we've sent to the printing department because he has no degree. So Edward got mad. He went to see the chief of staff and he told him, you're an idiot. You're an absolute idiot. You sent to the printing department where there is nothing very special and very creative to be done, a man just because he has no degree. That's ridiculous. I don't know that man. You don't know that man. And he pronounced those beautiful words. Remember one thing. You have to break the stone in order to discover the diamond that is hidden inside. When Edward Michelin pronounced those words, he knew nothing about that guy. He had not seen him. Break the guy. Send him to the commercial department. Ask him to buy stuff for the tires on the international markets. And then in a few months, you and I, we will contemplate that guy and we will come to conclusions about what he can do and what he cannot do. So here we have Marius, Marius in the commercial department. He's very bad in mathematics. He knows nothing about physics. He's here. He has to buy stuff for the tires. Marius, he knows nothing of mathematics, but he has to convert the currencies very quickly every day. So he invented a very simple ruler, something very basic, in order to make those conversions quite quickly. And one day, Edward Michelin walked by the desk of this man, and he saw that little ruler on the table. Edward Michelin is not only the boss, he's a mathematician and an engineer. He was amazed by this little thing. He took it in his hand, he looked at it, this little ruler, simple ruler, and he said to all those people around, he said, this guy is a genius. We call this absolute prudence. Absolute prudence is the capacity to grasp immediately the talents of people, their capacity to grasp reality immediately. When people see nothing special, he understood this guy is a genius. Without mathematics, without physics, to discover, to invent a little thing means that this guy is absolutely creative. He said, this guy must not be here in the commercial department. Geniuses don't work in the commercial department. Sorry for those who work in commercial departments. He said, send me that guy to the research department. Because we have a serious problem. We have a very serious problem. The cars are going faster and faster every day because there is a revolution in the sphere of motors. But the tires are the same tires all the time. Our old, ancient, traditional tires that warm up very quickly and they can explode at any moment. So the problem is that during decades, all those engineers, they are the top engineers of the French society. They are alumni of École Polytechnique, which is the top of the French educational system. During decades, those guys have been trying with mathematics, with curves, to understand what's a tire and why tires warm up at high speed. And how do you stop the process of warming of tires at high speed? They did not get it with mathematics. Marius, after a few years working there, without mathematics, just through investigation and experimentation and passion for the tire, discovered the problem. He discovered that we had to put cables, metallic cables, with a very specific angle inside the tire, and that stopped the process of heating of tires at high speed. Marius invented the very famous tire, which we know, the radial tire, that changed the whole industry of tires all over the world. Michelin was the number 20 on the market. It became the number 1 with the commercialization of the radial tire. What is this story about? This is not a business story. This is a leadership story. Who is the hero of the story? The hero of the story is not Marius. There are many people that are like Marius, but they didn't find their Edward. The hero is Edward. Edward, who said, break the stone. Remember always, we have to break the stone in order to discover the diamond that is hidden inside. He believed in diamonds, in each person. He believed in talents. He wanted to get to know each individual in the company to understand what is the talent of each person. Edward was an incredible person. He was really a magnanimous person with a sense of greatness and a sense of service. That's why he is one of the greatest leaders in the industry of the 20th century. Marius was a nobody. He had talents, but this was a potential talent. Nobody knew about his talent. He himself knew nothing about his own talent. His parents knew nothing about that guy. And they lived with him many years. And Marius lived with his boss a few months, and after a few months, he already knew who he was. Marius became the most famous engineer of the 20th century in the field of tires. He found a mission in his life, a mission in his work. He could work for the company, work for the country, work for the whole world. You see what Edward has done with Marius. Edward transformed that person who was a genius, but who didn't know he was a genius, into someone extraordinary whose life was a service to humanity. Achieving greatness by bringing out the greatness in others. This is an example of what leadership is about. Edouard Michelin was really a magnanimous leader. He understood what leadership was about, even if he never pronounced the word leadership. Achieving greatness by bringing out the greatness in others. In the United States, we had great people of the same caliber. I remember Herb Kelleher, who is the founder of Southwest Airlines, was a very similar person. He was magnanimous. He was dreaming. He was dreaming of helping us travel wherever we wanted for a good price, low cost transportation. That is number one in low cost transportation in the world. Herb Kelleher was used to say, we need to serve people. I want to serve my people. My people are more important. My employees are more important than my clients. And when clients come to me and tell me, I didn't like the way your employees behaved, he was used to say, I know my employees very well. They are perfect. Fly with another company. This goes against all the laws of business that we've learned, of capitalism at least, that we've learned at school. The client is always right. He said, no, the client is not always right. My employees are always right, not the clients. The clients very often make a lot of mistakes. And he was such a servant of his people that he said, we don't have any human resource department. We have a people department because human beings are not resources. They are an end in itself. We're here to serve them. So you discover in Herb Kelleher, you discover a great servant, a magnanimous dream, greatness, and at the same time, a great service to his employees. He was not using his employees to get the things done. He was serving them. Management, it's about moving things forward. Leadership, it's about moving people forward. But when you're a great manager that is a leader at the same time, you move things forward by moving people forward. This is what, in the end of the day, Michelin also did. He moved things forward because his company became the number one in the tire industry in the world. So nobody can say he was a bad manager. He was an exceptional manager because he was an extraordinary leader. Because he understood creativity comes not from the money, not from the machinery. Creativity comes from people. So we have to focus on people, transform them, help them achieve their talents, and then be happy in life, achieve self-realization, and on the long term, we'll have also extraordinary management results. So there is no incompatibility. A great manager is someone that is also a leader. Someone who knows how to build a corporate culture that will be attractive and that will bring fruits for the company on the long term. Management is about moving things forward. Leadership is about moving people forward. Very often managers that are not leaders, what do? They achieve certain results that are not bad, but their team is dead. You look at the team in the end of the process of achieving results, you see dead bodies, you see people that are psychiatrically or psychologically destroyed, or sometimes physically, just dead. This is not leadership at all. So I give you two examples of people that I think really were extraordinary leaders. There are many leaders in all spheres, in education, in business, in politics, in sports, whatever You have people that have a sense of greatness, that have a virtue of magnanimity and transform this into service, into humility. These are what we call real leaders. So I wrote that book. I spoke about the 4 cardinal virtues, how important they are for leaders. I spoke about the 2 specific virtues of leaders that are magnanimity and humility. And after a few years, I discovered that my students asked me a lot about magnanimity and humility. They wanted to know more. So I went on with my investigation about the concept of magnanimity to try to help them enter the very meaning of magnanimity. And I wrote that second book, Created for Greatness. After 5 years, after I published Virtuous Leadership, I wrote Created for Greatness, in which I explain how humility and magnanimity go hand in hand, and you cannot separate them from one another. In a few sentences, I will try to explain you the content of this book. Magnanimity, it is, as I told you, it is the striving of the heart, the mind, and the will towards great things. And the great thing is your personal growth. The great thing is not to conquer the world for your business products. That's a big thing, but it's not a great thing. The only great thing is human beings. Only human beings are great. So excellence is the aim, at the end of the day, of magnanimity. Magnanimous people are thinking in terms of people. They want people to be great. And they want to discover talents in people, like we saw in François Michelin's story. They want to discover talents in themselves. They are not afraid of speaking about their own talents. They want to acknowledge their talents. They want the others to acknowledge their talents. This is what magnanimity is about. A person that is magnanimous is naturally interested in his own talents. He wants to know, what are my gifts? What are my talents? How can I multiply those talents? He's not afraid of speaking of those things. But at the same time, he's humble. Because humility is the habit of living in the truth. Humility is the habit of living in the truth about yourself. And what's the truth? What's the truth about your talents? The truth about your talents is very simple. They are gifts. They are not the product of your activity. Of course, you can multiply those gifts, you can work on those gifts, you can make them bigger, greater, but the source of this gift is not you. It's a gift. It's been given to you by nature, by God. If you're a Christian, if you believe in God at least, you understand this is God's gift to me. If you don't believe, you say it's a gift of nature to me. It's something I have received. This is humility. And we see many people that don't understand those things. They feel their talents. But instead of being humble and understanding, this is a gift to me and I am responsible for what I have received, they think this is my stuff. I have produced this. And this is pride. This is not magnanimity. Instead of being magnanimous, instead of being great people, they are proud and self-centered because they lack the knowledge of the origin, the source of this very talent. So I tell you this thing. Magnanimity and humility, they go hand in hand. But the way to make them going hand in hand is to understand, I have talents. I am not afraid of my talents. This is not pride, this is truth. I have talents. I investigate those talents. This is magnanimity. But at the same time, I know this is a gift to me. It comes from God, it comes from nature. It's not the product of my work, although I can work on it. This is humility. You're in the truth. And we have to say this to young people, because many people have been educated in humility, but a humility that is not real. It looks more like pusillanimity, small-mindedness, small-heartedness. You know the guy who say, I'm nothing, I cannot do anything, I have to be a realist. It's wrong. Every one of us have certain talents. We have to investigate those talents. We have to be happy with the talents that we have. And we have to be capable of speaking about the talents we have. And young people need to learn that language. People need to learn that language when they're young, the language of talents. You have people that can speak hours and hours about their problems, about their sins, about their weaknesses, but they are totally incapable of speaking about their talents and their gifts. Do you think that's right? That's totally false. And because this is not humility. These are small-minded, small-hearted people. This is the way we educate many people. In small-mindedness, in pusillanimity, instead of magnanimity. Because we have a wrong vision of what humility is. So we have to have it very clear. When you speak 1 hour of humility, you have to speak 1 hour of magnanimity, especially to the young people. If not, they will not understand. And the problem is that they've heard a lot about humility, but they never heard about magnanimity. And many people can't even pronounce the word magnanimity. I gave a presentation on magnanimity to US generals. And after 1 hour, one came to me and said, the magnanimity thing was good. And the other said, the magnetism stuff was absolutely excellent. They could not pronounce the word magnanimity. Why? Never heard about it. Humility, no problem of pronunciation. But magnanimity, they couldn't pronounce it. It's a beautiful word that was created by Cicero in the year 44 before Christ. Cicero was a great lawyer and a philosopher. And he saw that the Greek people had a beautiful word, greatness of soul, megalopsychia. Megalopsychia is greatness of soul. And he said, I'm ashamed. We Romans, we have no word for that. I'm going to create a new word. And he created a new word, magnanimitas. And that gave the French magnanimité, the Spanish magnanimidad, and the English magnanimity. 44 before Jesus Christ. When the Greek had a word already 2,500 years before Jesus Christ. So magnanimity is a word we need to speak a lot about. In Moscow, where I give classes in the universities, very often students saw me in the corridors. Magnanimity. They remember all of them. I want to be magnanimous. I cannot be the small one. So they feel challenged by this beautiful word. But they understand at the same time that magnanimity goes hand in hand with humility, which is the truth. If not, you become proud, and pride is destruction. It's the destruction of the whole moral system. This was my second book. Then I discovered that in order to make the virtues easy to practice, attractive and easy to practice, we have to explain a little bit more about what is the biological structure of each one of us. We have a biological structure. We have things that are innate in us. We have basic inclinations that are related to our biological temperament. Choleric, phlegmatic, melancholic, and sanguine. These are things that also have been discovered by the ancient Greeks, also more than 2,000 years ago, by the great medical doctor Hippocrates. He understood, looking at people, that there are 4 basic ways of reacting to external stimuli. We have no time to enter into details. In my books, I explain this very well in detail. But that was 2,500 years ago. And we still live with those concepts because they are real. They are time-tested. Virtue, character, it is time-tested. Temperament, it is also time-tested. So it's good. Everything that is time-tested is good. If after 2,500 years we go on speaking about those things, remember, then it is good. because it has to do with real human nature. Human nature is a reality, even if the modern world deny this very idea of human nature. Nature means, natura means born with. You're born with the principle of human nature. If you deny those principles, you destroy yourself. Even if you don't want, you destroy yourself. You cannot go against your own nature. And in the world of ideology, which is the world in which we live today, of course, people deny human nature. They say, we are only thinking subjects. There is no such a thing as human nature. Between me and you, there is nothing in common except the fact that we are subjects. And we can re-engineer ourselves, we can reinvent ourselves every day. We can become whatever we want. We're God to ourselves. You need humility to understand that there is a nature. If you're proud, you cannot accept the idea of nature because you want to be a god. But the problem is that you're not a god. That's the big problem of a modern society. We are not gods, and we want to be gods. We want to re-engender ourselves, and this, of course, brings disasters. So I discovered that there are something basics. There are the 4 temperaments, and we have to speak about the 4 temperaments before speaking of the virtues. Why? Because each temperament is a very specific inclination. And the virtues that are a challenge for each temperament, for one temperament, are not a challenge for another temperament. Each temperament has a specific challenge in terms of virtues. And we have to discover that challenge in order to develop that virtue that is a real challenge for us. Because if we do this, then we can grow. If we don't do that, we cannot grow. I want to take a few examples. Choleric people. What's a choleric people? Among us, there are choleric people here. Choleric people are people who are born managers. I told you, no one is born a leader because leadership is a moral activity. It has to do with character. And you're born without character. You develop it with time, with the help of your parents, through the exercise of freedom. But you're born with a temperament. And your parents, if they know the signs of temperament, after a few months, they know exactly what kind of temperament you have. They know if you're phlegmatic, if you're choleric, if you're melancholic, or if you're sanguine. Parents who know the signs of temperaments, after a few months, they know exactly what's the predominant and secondary temperament of their children. Because the children don't have character. So they behave according to their basic, natural, biological inclination. So if you have problems in knowing your temperament, you better go to your parents and ask them, how was I? When I was 1 year, how did I behave? You should remember, mommy. Tell me more about what I was. I was a biological product. What kind of biological product was I? The choleric person is a manager. He is born a manager. He's born for action. He needs action all the time. He needs to set goals and to achieve those goals. Very often I see mothers who come to me and say, Alex, look at my kid. He's a leader. And I look at the kid and I say, well, he's a choleric. That means nothing in terms of leadership. Choleric people, to become leaders, have to become servant. Choleric people, as I told you, they are managers. They're born managers. They set goals, they achieve the goals, but when they look at you, what do they see? Human resources. You are, for them, a human resource in order to achieve a goal. You are not an end in itself. You are a resource. You get it? This is choleric. A choleric person without humility is a dictator, is a monster. Is a person that is going to use you in order to achieve a goal. That's why I told you that Herb Kelleher, who was a choleric, was at the same time a very humble person. When he said we don't have human resource department, we have a people's department because we deal with people. We serve our people. But many managers are not like that. They are just cholerics. And there is no humility in their lives. And then they use people. Choleric people are challenged by the virtue of humility, which is the virtue of service. They use people in a natural way instead of serving them. This is their first reaction. Their second reaction, when they begin to build humility, will be, stop. People are more important than things. I cannot use people. I need to help them. I need to help them grow. I need to transform them into leaders. Versus humility, service. But your first reaction will always be goals. How do you achieve goals? Instrument to achieve those goals. I achieve those goals. Pay me a good salary. The second reaction, if you have built humility, will be different. It will be, I'm here to serve those people. I'm not here to use them. So you see, when you're choleric, you have an extraordinary energy, which is the energy of cholerism. Action. You're action-oriented. And we need you. Modern society needs choleric. They need managers. They need to get things done. But those managers who are not humble, they are monsters. They cannot create a corporate culture. We cannot work with them along on the long term. You get my point. Choleric, be humble, and you will be excellent. Herb Kelleher was humble, choleric, and he was excellent. Melancholic, what's that? I am melancholic 70% and 30% choleric. You have a predominant temperament, normally a secondary temperament, that is another one. You can be a choleric melancholic. You just have temperaments that cannot fit one another. You cannot be a choleric and a phlegmatic, and you cannot be a melancholic and a sanguine. That does not fit either. But you can be a melancholic, choleric, choleric, melancholic, sanguine, choleric, choleric, sanguine. You have 12 possibilities of combinations, 12 possible combinations. I am a melancholic choleric. Melancholic people, they are dreamers. They are not interested in action. They are interested in ideas. They are interested in beauty, in truth. They are good writers, normally good speakers. They are painters. They are designers. They are very creative people. But they are not oriented towards action. They are oriented towards contemplation and reflection. These people are also very needed in society. In order to break the status quo, in order to discover new things, we need those creative spirits. But what's the danger? The danger with the melancholic is self-absorption. Melancholic people are very much absorbed by themselves, by their ideas, by their feelings, by their sentiments, by their ideals. So they are absorbed by themselves, and they have a difficulty to get outside themselves. And that's why I'm used to say that these people need the virtue of audacity. Audacity, boldness, in order to get outside themselves, to go toward the others, to share with the others what they need, to share the great things that is in yourself that you have, in order to share that with other people. Don't stay in a state of self-absorption too long, because you become crazy, first of all, and secondary, you will not be a servant of humanity. You have a lot of things inside yourself, those of us who are melancholic. You have to share this with others. You have to go towards others. You have to travel. You have to move. You have to make friends. You have to call friends. You have to be interested in others. You have to be bold. You have to take risks. You have to get outside yourself because you are afraid of the external world. Melancholic people live from the internal world, and they are afraid of what's outside, because what's outside is not perfect. And the melancholic people are perfectionists. They want perfection in everything, because they are idealistically minded. The ideal for them is the truth. And the ideal is always perfect. In my mind, in my heart, things are perfect. But when I transform the dream into action, into a mission, it's not perfect, because human beings are not perfect and they are sinful. And then the thing will be a disaster. So melancholic people are afraid of action, because action means quality. The quality gets down, So the melancholic people are afraid of that. So the melancholic people, I tell them all the time, if you develop boldness, audacity, you will become an extraordinary human being. And many people have been have been melancholic and at the same time very bold. Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln, was a melancholic. But he was also a doer. But he was not born to do things. He developed the virtue of audacity, of boldness. It's not innate in him. It's the fruit of his education, of self-education, of freedom. He developed it. Martin Luther King was 100% a melancholic. He was a writer, he was a poet. I have a dream. This came out of his heart. He was a poet. He was not made to be a doer. He became a doer. He became audacious. So you have a lot of examples of people that were very melancholic, but at the same time develop character and become men and women of action. Moses, the very famous Moses of the ancient Testament, he was very melancholic. He was afraid of action. He wanted his brother Aaron to be the leader. He said, Aaron is much better than me for those things. He was afraid of everything. If I go to the Jewish people, what will they say? If I said that, what would they say? He was afraid. He had incredible fears, typical of a melancholic. He overcame these fears by developing the virtue of audacity and boldness. And he's the model. Moses is, for many leaders, he's the model of leadership in the world. So those of you who are melancholic, remember that. Boldness is the challenging virtue. Those of you who are sanguine, what's a sanguine? Sanguine people are in communication all the time. The sanguine are people who love people. They cannot live without the others. You know, they live in the present, in the now. They need la joie de vivre. Yeah, it's very important, la joie de vivre. Such a beautiful word, French word that English people use the word joie de vivre also. The joy of life. So the sanguine people are in communication all the time. They need people, they need to make jokes, they need to be happy with people, they need to love people, and they need to be loved by people. And this is the way of self-realization for them. Very good communicators, always in communion with people. What's their weaknesses? Their weaknesses is that because they live in the present and they forget about the future and the past, they get amazed by things very quickly. But as soon as routine comes in, they get bored and they stop doing the job and they begin something else. Because they like to begin, because to begin is fun. To begin is fun. To terminate the job is not fun. It takes years, it takes months. It's boring. To put the last stone is boring. To put the first stone is fantastic. You have music around, people are very happy, we drink vodka and champagne. But we forget about the last stone. It's not our job. So sanguine people like fun. They like novelty. They like joy. As soon as they get bored, because routine comes in, and in 90% of jobs, the routine comes in at a moment or another. Let's stop. This is not for me anymore. Let's think about something else. What's the challenging virtue? The challenging virtue is going to be endurance. Persist. All the virtues related to time are going to be the virtues challenging the sanguine. Endurance. You have to do the thing till the end and don't begin something else until you've not finished the job. You get it? So those of you who are sanguine need to remember that. I need to finish the job before beginning a new job. I need to terminate the things. I need to finish. I need to put the last stone. This is the challenge of my life. And if I do this, I become an extraordinary person. You had in the United States a president who was very sanguine. Well, you had many. But one was very sanguine, so much so that he was an actor. Ronald Reagan. Reagan was a very sanguine personality. But Ronnie, he wanted to be like his mother. And she was an incredible woman. She was a woman of character. And he built persistence. People can say, I like what he did, or I don't like what he did. That's another question. But no one can doubt that he was a man of character. He was a man of character. He was a sanguine who did the job. He set goals and he achieved those goals. He had very clear ideas about what has to be done, and he did it till the end. So these are what is a sanguine people that are capable of endurance, and they go till the end. An actor who became a president, who was a man of character, this does not happen every day. Many presidents are actors, although they are not professional actors. You follow me? We see millions of presidents in every country that are actors. They're acting all the time. They don't walk the talk. They speak, but they do nothing. They are actors, but they have never been professional actors. Here you have a professional actor that walks the talk. I can say, you can agree or not agree with what he did, but he was a man of character. It's always complicated with politicians in leadership because they make a lot of decisions, and many decisions maybe don't like, are not decisions that everyone likes. But we have to take distance with that. When you're in politics, you have to make millions of decisions every day, and it's normal that from time to time certain decisions don't fit what you were expecting from them. You are phlegmatic people. Phlegmatic people are people of peace. They love peace. They are not born for action. They are not born for ideas. They are not born for people. They are born for peace. They are very rational. They love facts. They love mathematics, facts, rationality, scientific approach to reality. We love these people. We need them. I'm a melancholic. I have a friend that is a very, very phlegmatic person and a good person, a virtuous man. And very often when I have many problems, I come to him. I tell him my problems, and he tells me, Alex, you don't have many problems. You have one problem only. All the problems you're speaking about, they exist only in your imagination. There is no foundation in reality for that. No facts. We need those people. Phlegmatic people, very rational, very clear. Facts, facts, facts. They are very important people. What's the difficulty? What's the challenge for them? The challenge is going to be magnanimity. Why? Because they don't like to dream. Why? Because the dream is the opposite of science. The dream is the opposite of rationality. The dream is something not rational, it's something very intuitive. And when you come to a phlegmatic with a dream, you say, stop. He's afraid of this guy, he's a crazy guy. For him, a dream is crazy. It doesn't fit mathematics, doesn't fit physics, doesn't fit rationality. So they have to understand that they have a tendency to be functionaries. They have a natural tendency to be functionaries, which means to be okay with the status quo, to be okay with what they have. If it works, Alex, why would we try to do it better? It works. It's okay. So they have to discover that dreaming is a good thing, that for human beings, it's important to dream. And they need for that to develop the virtue of magnanimity. Melancholic people dream a lot, but they have a difficulty to implement the dream. Phlegmatic people, the problem is that they don't want to dream, they're afraid of the dream. So you have to help them dream about greatness, about dreaming about themselves, discovering their talents. Phlegmatic people have a serious difficulty in acknowledging their talents. They're afraid of their talents. They think they're worth nothing, when very often they have a lot of talent, but they don't acknowledge their talents. They don't know their talents. We have to help them discover their own talents and begin to dream about many things and go forward in life. This was the result of my investigation, and I wrote that book, From Temperament to Character. From Temperament to Character, it's a book for people who want to understand what's my temperament and what is the virtue that is challenging my life. I am melancholic. I discovered that the virtue that is challenging me is audacity. So I began to practice audacity. I began to travel a lot. I began to meet a lot of people. I began to stop being with myself all the time. I'm a writer. I write books. I could be sitting in a chair and write from 9 o'clock in the morning till 9 o'clock in the evening, and I would be very happy with that. But I would not grow I would not become an excellent person. I would stay where I am. You understand that each one of you has to discover what is his challenging virtue and begin to practice it. I explain in that book how to practice those virtues that are a challenge for us. So the theory of temperaments make the virtue very understandable. And young people love that because young people understand, okay, now we're speaking about who I am biologically, and I like to discover who I am. And now you explain to me what's next. What's next? So it's very simple for them, it's very clear. They agree with their basic biological inclinations, and they see immediately what's the problem. And they begin to talk about that, and they begin to develop the virtue that is a challenge for them. And after that book, I wrote another one. I wrote Free Hearts. Why did I write that book? First, because as I told you, the 4 cardinal virtues are virtues of the intellect and the will. Prudence, courage, self-mastery, and justice. These are virtues very deeply rooted in the intellect and the will. But magnanimity and humility are virtues of the heart. We say of someone that is humble of heart, is magnanimous of heart. These are very deep virtues that are really ideals of life because they are rooted in the heart of the person. That's why when you say to me, this is a magnanimous girl, I say, got it, I understand perfectly what that girl is about. If you tell me this is a courageous girl, I will say, okay, she has courage, then she can be audacious, it's good. But if you tell me she's magnanimous, I say, I got the picture, I got the whole picture. The same thing as when you tell me she's a humble person. If I understand humility as I understand it myself, I say, wow, fantastic, she's of service to humanity all the time. So she's a woman of service. She's serving by her life, by her talents, people all the time. When you tell me she has self-mastery, I say, good for her. But I don't say, wow. You understand the difference? The magnanimity and humility are ideals of life. They give a meaning to your existence. The 4 cardinal virtues don't give any meaning at all. They are just natural, fundamental instruments that can help you become real human beings. But they are not ideals of life. The only ideals of life are the virtues of magnanimity and humility. And they are rooted in the heart of the person. So I had to write a book about what's the heart. How do you empower your heart? The difficulty is that in the modern world, we have a lot of rationalists. Rationalists are people who say only the brain, only the intellect. Don't want to hear about the heart, don't want to hear about the will. We have also a lot of sentimentalists. The sentimentalists, people who say the heart, the heart, the heart, but no will and no intellect, just the heart. This is not a heart. This is something else. This is sentimentalism. And sentimentalism is a corruption of the sentiments because the real sentiments are always in interaction with the will and the intellect. If they are not in interaction with the will and the intellect, they are corrupted. And sentiments become sentimentalism. The same way that rationality becomes rationalism if the heart is not involved in your human rationality. And then you have what they call the voluntarist. The voluntarist people are people who focus on the will. The Nietzschean people who say there is no intellect, no truth, there is no heart. The only thing is the will, what I want to achieve, the ideology. People in ideology are the voluntarists, the Nietzschean people, the willpower. And I found that many people have temptations to be the voluntarist, or to be the sentimentalist, or to be the rationalist. And I wanted to help them find harmony and balance between the heart, the intellect, and the will. And that's why I wrote that book, Free Hearts. It's a book that helps you understand what can be your problem in terms of unity of your personality, unity of the heart, the mind, and the will. And the last book I wrote, it's Coach coached by Joan of Arc. It's a very special book. Because in all my books before, what I've been doing, I've been investigating many different things of the human person, relating that to leadership, and I've been giving a lot of examples. Very many people you see in my books, there is a theory, but every time where there is a statement, there is an example. So it's a very practical book. A lot of pictures inside, you understand perfectly what I'm speaking about. It's simple, accessible, but at the same time very clear. In that book, I made the opposite thing. I knew very well as a Frenchman, I couldn't be without knowing the story of Joan of Arc, the true story of Joan of Arc. It's the person in Middle Ages we know the most about because we have more than 3,000 pages of trial. The Joan of Arc's trial is sealed. These are papers that are sealed. It's all the answers and the questions that were made to Joan of Arc during the trial in Rouen in the 15th century. So we know everything about her. Everything. All the answers she gave about every stupid question that was asked to her. So we had beautiful material. I studied that material, and I discovered that she is an absolute example of leadership. Absolute example. She practiced all those virtues. She was a choleric, so she was a doer. She was a great manager. She drove out of France the Brits. This is management. But she was an extraordinary leader because she changed the hearts of millions of people by her life, by her example. France was a disaster. The French people were a disaster. They were small-minded. They were corrupted. It was not a nation. There was no France because there was no French people. There was no people. So there was not a nation. There was nothing. After one year of work, she transformed the heart of those people. And the French people became another country, real nation. They stopped being the small-minded, small-hearted people, the pusillanimous. They became good men, good women with hope. She inspired them to become better human beings. This is what we call leadership. And then in that book, she explains us in 15 leadership sessions, situations in which she was, and how we have to deal with those situations. So she explained the doctrine of virtuous leadership through her own life experience. So it's exactly the opposite process of what I've been doing before. Before I wrote doctrine, I gave examples. Here I have one example only, and she speaks about the doctrine. She explains you what it means to practice those things that Alexander Havard had been writing about before in her own life experience. That's why this book is very famous. It's the book that I like the most. They even did recently an audio book in English of Coached by Joan of Arc. This is what I've been doing, my friend, and you see the process. And then you come to understand that virtuous leadership is the whole system. It is not just one idea here, one idea here. Everything is related. Temperament, character, magnanimity, humility, the heart, doctrine, examples, discovering a mission in life as a part of the virtue of magnanimity. You see that everything is related. We have about 10 topics in virtuous leadership, and they are related to one another. And then I began to give a lot of classes. I made courses online. You can have access. If you go to virtuousleadership.com, you can register and you can spend 50 hours with me. It's not bad. Not 1 hour and a half like now, but 50 hours with me on 5 or 6 different models related to virtuous leadership. Virtuousleadership, one word, .com. And you can find there what we call education online. And during 1 year, you can come back whenever you want to those videos. You can study them, you can watch them millions of times, and you can discover or deepen in your life this science of virtuous leadership. This is what I want to tell you today. and I think it's enough for today. I'm not cold, it's okay. Are you good? I didn't even need vodka today. I am okay. When you speak, you warm up. That's why I took off my sweater. I understood I'm going to warm up. Okay, I will be very happy, of course, to answer questions if you have questions.
Thank you, Alex. This was wonderful. I forgot to mention earlier that for the same price, he came this morning and gave a lecture at Loreto Academy to the entire high school. And so we had the fortunate, his talk at the time was from temperament to character. So that's what was taught, her talk was this morning at Loreto. So thank you again for doing that. And it was warmer than it is here. But anyways, so anybody has a question?
Good evening. It sounded as how you were presenting that each individual only would have one, at most two of those four categories. Would it be the case of a single individual having more of them, or that's common, and there's more present on one of the aspects of the...
Thank you. This is a very good question. You know, if we know well the science of temperament, we discover that only two temperaments are possible as a combination. The thing is that what happens? Very often I have students who come to me, Alex, I think I have the four temperaments. I will give you an example of how it's very easy to make a mistake. It's when you confuse your first reaction with your second reaction. Your second reaction is character. Your first reaction is biology. Imagine you're a melancholic, which means self-absorbed. But at the same time, you see, well, I'm good in communication. So you can think, then I am a melancholic sanguine. In fact, you study a bit that person and you see, no, he's not a sanguine at all. He has been developing the virtue of justice through all his life because he understood that people are a very important value and that he cannot be with himself all the time. So he has been developing the virtue of communication. That's why he looks like a sanguine, but he's not. His first reaction is not that. His first reaction is always a reaction of a melancholic, which is give me peace. You see? It's not the reaction of I'm going to you guys because I love you, because I need you. The second reaction is always a reaction that is character. That's why when you make those temperament tests, and we have a temperament test that is very good. It's very easy to find it. It's temp, T-E-M-P, .hvli.org. Maybe Pam can show it. We have a temperament test, been working a lot on it. I explained people at the very beginning, we are here to understand, you are here to understand what's your first reaction, not your second. We are not asking you what are you doing in this situation, because what you are doing in a concrete situation is the result of temperament and character. You are here to forget about your character and to think about your first reaction. So you are here to understand what is your biological structure. You get it? You can have choleric people that are also very good at people because they are humble. And they can tell me, Alex, I think I am also a choleric person that have a high level of control of his own passions. And he can tell me, look, Alex, I think I am choleric phlegmatic because I am a man of peace. You see, I like peace, I'm very rational, I'm very scientific. When you look a little bit closer, you say, well, no, you're not a man of peace at all. You have been developing the virtue of peace because you understood that you have to control your wrath, your anger, and you've been doing the job. So when you make a mistake like this, You can say it's bad because it's a mistake. But there is a good message here. The message is that you have been developing virtues. If you have not been developing virtues, your temperament is very clear. Because there is no confusion between virtues and temperament, between character and temperament. So people that have been developing character, they can have certain difficulty to understand those tests. How do they work? You understand? Because they don't understand. I know many phlegmatic people that have been real doers. And then they can come to me and say, Alex, I think I am a phlegmatic choleric, because I'm a doer. I say, no, John, you're not a doer at all. You've been developing action because you understood that to live like in apathy is not a good thing. You see what I mean? So it's not the same thing. That was those personality tests, like many people do in companies. It's a complete mixture of temperament and character. It's not about what's your temperament. These are not temperament tests. These are purely now. What would you do in that situation? It's a mixture of biology and spirituality. It's a mixture of character and temperament. You got the point. But the important is to get to know your temperament in order to understand what is the virtue that is going to be a challenge in all your life. So when you make those tests, you need to forget about character. You need to forget about what you will do in that situation. You need to think about what's my first reaction. Even if it's 1 second, you see, what's my first reaction in that situation? You understand my point? Because this is something biological, and you will always have this first reaction. Maybe it will be very, very short. The more you develop character, the more the second reaction comes immediately after the first one. But the first one will always be there. You know, choleric is action, and the first reaction is movement. His second reaction can be people, but his first reaction is not going to be people. It's going to be movement, action, doing. Okay, so when he grows in character, he develops the virtue, and then his second reaction becomes a spiritual reaction. So that's why we say we can't have the three temperaments. We can have two temperaments.
Yes, sir.
When you're looking at temperaments and teams, are there temperaments that work better together, that bring out more of the temperaments, complement each other, and temperaments that want to stay away?
When you have a team, you understand you better have all the temperaments, because each temperament is an incredible capital. Each temperament has a faculty to discover things that the other has not. For instance, the choleric, you know he's going to do the job. He wants to move things. So he will be the mover and shaker of the whole team. A melancholic, you know you need him. You need him because you need an idea. If you want to sell something, you better have an originality and a creativity. So you need a melancholic to produce something. You need a choleric to move that idea forward. You need a sanguine for what? To gather people around that idea, to make that idea pleasant, attractive. This is the job of sanguines. And why do you need phlegmatics? You need phlegmatics because you cannot live out of emotions and enthusiasm a long time. You need people that are capable of systematizing something. You need systems. You need processes. Who do this? Phlegmatic people. It's their job. They don't come at the beginning, they come at the end. At the beginning, what do you need? An idea produced by the melancholic, energy produced by the choleric, communication done by the sanguine, and in the end, you need a process for the long-term success. If not, there is no long-term. It's just a short-term and it will die out. You get it? So in general, we need all those people of a certain function in society, and we need to be capable of working with all of them. In a team, it's a little bit different because you're in the same process. When you have a melancholic, you say, well, this guy is important for us. Why? Because he will see all the problems. Melancholic people, the first thing they see is the problems. Why? Because they love perfection, and nothing is perfect. So they see problems, they would criticize the project, they would criticize you, say this isn't good information. And you write all the minuses of the product. After you, the sanguine is going to speak. And the sanguine is going to say, no problem at all. There is no problem. Only opportunities. Everything is good, no problem. You say those guys are also dangerous because when there is a problem and you don't see it, it's also a problem. So you're going to write down all the positive things that the sanguine are seeing. Okay? And then after you have the phlegmatics, that you're choleric, you're leading the team fundamentally. You have the phlegmatics, you know they are going to be very peaceful, very rational. So you need all those people in a team for two reasons. First, because it gives you an enormous information, because each one of them sees something that the others cannot see, first of all. Second, because they learn interaction between themselves. The choleric feel to be challenged by the phlegmatic, who is very peaceful, very quiet. The melancholic can feel challenged by the sanguine, because you see these guys are optimistic and I am pessimistic. I'm ashamed of myself. You see what I mean? But at the same time, the sanguine say, well, I am too optimistic. I am crazy. You know, when sanguine people tell you, don't worry, we will work it out. Very often you say, well, you're very afraid of sanguine people who tell you, don't worry, we will work it out. If it's a choleric who tells you this, okay, he will work it out. If it's a sanguine that tells you, don't worry, no problem, you know there is a problem. You know what I mean? It's very important to understand people. If it's a sanguine that tells you this, you're afraid, fear. But if it's a phlegmatic that tells you those things, don't worry, things are under control, you know it's true. It's a fact, you know? So by knowing well the temperament, you develop a culture of understanding and love inside the corporation, because people understand themselves, they love also themselves, and they understand their friends very well, and they know how to speak to them. If you are a sanguine, you don't go towards a phlegmatic as if he was not a phlegmatic. You know this guy is rational, scientific. You have to go to him with numbers, facts, and not with, you know what I mean? I have a dream. And the guy you fired in 5 minutes. You know, if your boss is a phlegmatic and you come like this, you fired. So you learn how to present things to them in a way that they can understand what you're speaking about. You agree with me? So the temperaments are very important for communication, but they are fundamentally important for you, for your personal growth, because they help you identify the virtue that is needed.
Okay, one last question.
Well, thank you very much for your great lecture. You're talking about temperaments, and obviously that's been since ancient history, and then you talk about humility and magnanimity. In our days, with the new challenges with society, do you think now it's easier or is more difficult to develop those traits, virtues? Because I don't know, I think sometimes the message right now is the center is the person, and we're forgetting about others. So you have to achieve, you have to be great, and I think we're forgetting about others. Is it more difficult now to achieve those virtues, or is it the same as always?
Well, it depends very much on your parents, because family is really the cradle of your own development. I think the values of modern civilization, of course, are not values that help developing virtues, especially self-mastery, courage, prudence. The four basic virtues are very challenged. And also the two specific virtues of leaders, because we live in a world where there is no real place. We speak a lot about greatness, but we want to create small people, zombies. And we speak a lot about service, but at the end of the day, we don't serve people. We just serve our personal interest. That's right. In the modern world, it can be very different. It can be much more difficult. But this difficulty is also an opportunity, because when you understand it's difficult to develop that virtue, you feel challenged, you know? And when you understand this, then you say, okay, I want this challenge for me. I can say no to the values that the society offers me today. Viktor Frankl, who wrote this beautiful book, Man's Search for Meaning, he was in Auschwitz. His wife died in Auschwitz. And he was a medical doctor, and he tried to understand how his friends, the Jews, he was a Jew himself, behave in hardship, the hardship of a concentration camp. And he wrote this beautiful sentence. He said, in the concentration camp in Auschwitz, there were only two kinds of people in the end of the day: the pigs and the saints. And he said, those who behave like pigs, it's because they made a decision to become pigs in order to save their lives. Those who behave like saints, it's because they made a decision to be saints and to die for the others. So he understood that we are free. We are free to say yes or no to the values that are offered to us by society. And very often, if we say, no, I don't like those values because they goes against my human dignity, well, you're going to become a saint. This is an extraordinary opportunity for holiness. You see what I mean? So the fact that the values of the civilization you live in goes against your conscience, against what you truly believe as a value, helps you also understand that now you have no choice, my friend. You have to be excellent, or you will be a zombie. You have to be a saint. If not, you will become a pig. But there is nothing in between. In many times, there was something in between. Nowadays, you're right. Nowadays, there is nothing in between. You have to make a choice. Either a saint or a pig. But you're responsible for the decision you make. This is the result of the investigation of Viktor Frankl, who is one of the greatest philosophers, anthropologists, and psychologists of the 20th century. We're free. We're free, and it's challenging, but the challenge is good, because then there is no place for mediocrity. You see, no place for mediocrity. You agree with me? I'm sure you agree. That's why virtuous leadership is an answer. It's an answer to those people who say, we live in a hard world. I don't want mediocrity for myself. I don't want mediocrity for my children. What can I do? Well, the only way is excellence. And the excellence, it's magnanimity and humility, greatness and service.
Okay.
First one here.
One last one in
It's a big one.
Yeah, a big one, Salvador. Stand up so that everybody can.
You mentioned
Okay.
a lot about really become virtuous. What about the spirituality? Where does it come into play?
Well, spirit, be careful with the words we use. A virtue is a spiritual, its spiritual character is something spiritual, because it has to do with the intellect, the heart, and the mind. These are the spiritual faculties of human beings. So what you want to say now is not spiritual. You want to speak about religion, which is something else. Every human being is spiritual, because every human being has a spirit. And the spirit, it's the heart, the mind, and the will. So character is spiritual. Temperament is biological. Okay? But now I think he wants to mention something else, which is religion. Religion has a very strong impact on the way we practice the virtues. When you're a Christian, you understand that faith, hope, and charity are supernatural virtues, and they have a very strong impact on the way we practice the human virtues. So when people believe in God, trust in God, this has a big impact on the way they are going to practice courage, audacity, justice, magnanimity, humility. Just take an example. If you are a Christian and you know that you are a child of God or a daughter of God, you can imagine the power that this gives you to practice magnanimity. Because magnanimity is acknowledging your dignity. And there is nothing higher as the dignity of a child of God. There is nothing better than that. It's the top level, I would say, of dignity. So in religion, there is a sense of dignity, which is a very important aspect of the virtue of magnanimity. It doesn't mean that people that are not religious cannot be magnanimous. They can. But when people have a God and they consider themselves as children of God, they will dream God's dream. So simple. And there is nothing higher and there is nothing more magnanimous than dreaming God's dream. And dreaming God's dream, it's dreaming not only about human excellence, it's about dreaming about being holy, being saints. That's it. So you see, leadership, it's a human activity. There is no such a thing as Christian leadership. There is no such a thing as Christian leadership. There is just leadership, which is magnanimity and humility, and these are human virtues that anyone can practice. But if you're a Christian, you have much more information and much more power that is given by grace to you to practice those human virtues. You elevate the virtues, you purify your virtues, you strengthen your virtues, and you transfigure your virtues. So it's easier to be a real human being when you have a religion, specifically when you're a Christian. But the essence of leadership is not religion. The essence of leadership is human virtue, not supernatural virtue. Leadership is a human activity. There is no such a thing as Christian leadership. What we have, it is leaders that are Christians. But leadership is a human activity. So don't use the word Christian leaders. It means nothing. You have to use the word leaders that are Christians. You got it. Engineers that are Christians. What does it mean, a Christian engineer? I don't understand this word. What does it mean, a Christian engineer? It's an engineer that is a very good engineer who is also a Christian. He's a Christian lawyer. What do you mean by that? I understand a lawyer who is a Christian, but a Christian lawyer, what's that? Is there a specific Christian law? Is there a specific engineering system, Christian engineering system? No, there is not. So leadership is a human activity. There is no such a thing as Christian leadership. What there is, it is leadership practiced by Christians. That's true. That's my answer to your question. Thank you, guys. I'm so happy. I'm so happy to be with you.